Welcome to the Consumer Connections podcast powered by Scylla. I'm James Piecowye.
I'm Faisal Khan.
And in this podcast episode, we will be discussing market research and keeping up with consumer trends. Faisal, who do we have joining us on this episode?
So we've got Ahmed Abdelhamid. He's been in the industry for almost 2 decades now. For the last year, he's been leading insights for one of the most trusted brands in Kuwait, which has influence across GCC. Ahmed and I go way long back for about 10 years. We've worked a lot together and quite excited to have him here. Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, James.
He's one of the most hands-on and hands-on researchers I've known. Very close to consumers, very close to data.
I'm hoping that's a good thing. I usually hear that in a bad context.
Ahmed, you're perfectly placed to help us understand a little bit more about Kuwait and Kuwaiti consumers and insights that are coming out of Kuwait, because for the most part, when I think about Arab countries, Kuwait doesn't really fit in. It doesn't fit in, it doesn't come into the conversation. What we tend to be talking about, and when we talk about market research and consumer insights, we tend to talk about the typical places: Saudi, Lebanon, Egypt. How do you see Kuwait comparing to these countries, and can you contrast and compare how we deal with the insights?
Sure. So let me just tell you that before I came to Kuwait, we used to refer to Kuwait as a rollout market. So whatever you do in Saudi and UAE is basically what you would do in Kuwait without actually having to study the Kuwaiti market and see if it works or not. However, Kuwait is the second highest GDP per capita in the world. It's a very rich nation. It's rich not just because of money, it's rich in culture as well. And when I joined the research field in Kuwait, I was surprised because it's what we used to call that rollout market. What you do in bigger markets, you do here automatically, right? But when you come here and you understand that, guys, it's a completely different culture, very, very rich culture, by the way, that takes years and years to understand and study. So it is a small market, yet it's very lucrative for brands, and it's very rich. You can get a lot of insights that you would never, ever think you would get out of Kuwait, such a small country.
So if Kuwait was if we think of Kuwait as a rollout market and just kind of blanket it with what's done everywhere else, describe to me the Kuwaiti consumer. What makes them different? Can you be more specific?
So, okay, let's talk. I think we need to talk globalization first. So you will find that Kuwaiti consumers are impacted one way or another by globalization. So you will see the same consumer persona in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, all over MENA, and they'll be influenced typically by the Western civilization, so to speak. Yet they have very distinctive traits. And let me give you an example. So, and this makes research quite a challenge, yet very interesting. My very first study in Kuwait, I was surprised that no one really recalls brands, right? They don't recall names.
Really?
Like, how am I going to do research here if no one recalls names? Like, how am I going to do this, right? Because they typically refer to products by pack color, or they might call it something completely different. So they would tell you the red pack from this brand or the yellow pack from this brand. But when you come and ask them, like, do you know this brand? I don't, right? So they might refer to it as the, let's say, yellow thick cream product. They know it's from a trusted brand, but they don't know what the brand is. Now, I'm not saying that all consumers are like that, but we find a huge chunk of the population actually referring to products by pack color rather than brand name itself. This was very interesting to me. And then once you dive into the psyche of the consumer, you get to really understand where it's different. So I can tell you for sure that consumers here are extremely, let's call them well behaved. You never show them a concept and they'll tell you, no, I'm sorry, this is absolute garbage, right? You can't sell me this. They'll tell you it's nice, right? Whether they buy it or not is a completely different story, which makes it a big challenge for us as well. To be able for you to decipher what consumers really mean in the market is a huge challenge. And that's what we also call in research overclaim, right? So typically in Europe, this overclaim is actually an underclaim. So people wouldn't rate your product highly, right? As much as they would love to. And that is because they're actually more accustomed to saying what they think. You know, there's this aspect of the culture that is there. But in Kuwait, typically, it is frowned upon if you say something bad, right, about someone, product, etc. So what you get is an overclaim, and this makes it challenging. And I've seen overclaim in Egypt. I've done research in maybe 15 other markets. Overclaim is there, but it's not as big as here, to be honest. Another thing that makes it very distinctive here is consumers seek social conformity, so to speak. It's a very, very important aspect for your product to get adopted in the market. They value local brands like I haven't seen before, honestly. Like I would see concepts like, you know, farm to table, you know, locally grown, all that stuff. But they do actually cherish local brands more than any other market I've worked in, which makes them quite distinct. And, you know, it's just a completely different culture than what I've seen in other markets. And you might think that, you know, research you do here is the same research you'll do everywhere. But these specifics make the Kuwaiti consumer very distinctive to me, honestly.
This is a conversation that Faisal and I have had over and over, and others at Scylla, with the whole idea that we can't lump all of the Arab countries together because they're all very different. And
Yes.
this, what you're saying, just highlights the need to be able to understand different consumers in the context of where they actually are. What kind of strategies then do you end up employing in Kuwait so that you can be current and accurate in your understanding of this complex consumer behavior environment?
I completely agree with Ahmed. And this is, unfortunately, it is an extremely common problem of referring to Arabs as one unit, and using insights in, let's say, Saudi Arabia and UAE, and just kind of, like Ahmed said, rolling it out to other markets. But every country has a very unique culture. Ahmed's already spoken about the uniqueness of a Kuwaiti consumer, right from how they respond to research, to how they are as consumers, to them just being polite. So it has huge implications, because what is likely to work in a Saudi just not necessarily can work in a Kuwait. You know it, and we've seen cases.
Yeah.
And Ahmed and I have worked in markets and done research where we initially did, let's say, a one market study or two market study, and then we kind of decided to, expand it and say, let's go across the different markets, whether that's, UAE, Kuwait, Saudi, the different markets, because the consumers are different, and as a proof of concept, we have seen those differences.
What kind of research is needed to make your market viable? What kind of market research do you need to do? Can you sort of paint that picture in what
Sure.
Faisal and I both said?
Sure. So let me answer Faisal first, because the risk runs high when you don't understand the culture and what you're marketing to people. So I always say an organization without research is an organization without eyes, right? Because we've seen a lot of brands that have launched products with wrong names, and these names would be inappropriate in a culture, right? So when you treat Kuwait as a raw market, you're risking not really understanding if your product it will be accepted, right? If it's as simple as not named correctly or appropriately, if people do find a real need for it or not. Now let me give you some clear distinctions between Saudi and Kuwait, at least from where I stand. You will see that in Kuwait, for example, over the past 3 years, the healthy product shelves has tripled in size, right? And you might look at this and be like, okay, so any healthy product would work, right? When in fact, when you look closer at the shelf, it is actually two products that are, or two types of products that are selling well. One is low in sugar, and that is because it's one of the it's a nation that is extremely high in terms of diabetes rate all over the world. And the second is protein, like high protein content, right? Products. Other than that, you can try to sell as much as you can. You will probably sell peanuts, and you would have spent a lot of money trying to sell, and you'll get peanuts, right? So, and when you dig deeper into this, some stuff is obvious, like, a nation with a high rate of diabetes, yeah, you can sell products that are low. But then when you come to protein, right? If you're a company that hasn't done its research, you probably think that's because, people probably go to the gym and they want protein. So this is where I need to position, or this is how I need to position my products on the market. When in fact, if you ask people what protein means and what implications it has on health, it has nothing to do with going to the gym. You will see that the average consumer is saying, I need to get my fair share of protein, the minimum daily requirements, regardless of whether they go to the gym or not. It's been embedded, and it's been sort of approved in society that protein is the most important macronutrient, and you need to make sure you're getting enough of it every day, right? So again, you might run risks of spending money, a lot of money, trying to market your product, thinking that it is the same as in Saudi, because we know that in Saudi, for example, that's not the case. Protein is mainly consumed by gym goers, right? So you might say, okay, I'm going to position my product to gym goers in Kuwait, and I'm going to sell. That's not the case. You're limiting yourself to a small niche in Kuwait when you could be selling to all of Kuwait, to the total population. So it is important to understand each market separately, even if that means you have to spend, because the cost of doing research will never ever be the cost of launching a product, logistics, all that stuff. It's always going to be low. It's always going to be peanuts compared to that.
You know why I love you, right?
So is it because Kuwait is such a small country that people don't want to invest in those research dollars? Is that at the end of the day, that's the problem?
Yeah, I think companies typically fall into this pitfall, which is basically, research is expensive. It takes time. I think a lot of also companies know that doing research in Kuwait is extremely challenging. And I can tell you this for sure. Whatever, like, let's say a research would take 1 month somewhere else, it could take me here up to 3 months to do. So no one wants to waste all this time. It's not just a factor of money. It's also the factor of time. And so, yes, I think, at the end of the day, if you take it in relation to the amount of money you'd make out of a big market like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, Kuwait is bound to be overlooked in terms of research, right?
Just to add to Ahmed's point, sometimes the reason is not cost. It's just what we were originally talking about, is that, hey, they're just similar to Saudis. And that blanket statement is extremely annoyable,
True.
because, and it's so wrong at many levels, because it's just a perception that, so it's not, even if there are budgets available, it's just, and it's not always, and it's like Ahmed said, while he's calling it a small market, from a volume or value share perspective, it's not necessarily small. There are some categories where it, hands down beats UAE or any other market in the region, and sometimes even Saudi. by sheer. I mean, like for example, I've worked on travel, on the travel category, and the average spends of a traveler, of a Kuwaiti, someone who's outbound travel from Kuwaiti, is way higher than any other market. They're luxurious travelers. They spend money, and it's just more about this perception that sits that they're very similar, and I think that needs to really change with time.
Ahmed, you've been at this game for quite a while. How
Yeah.
has your research evolved?
Research is evolving quite slow in Kuwait, at a very slow rate. And I'll tell you why. It's again the challenges that you face doing research in Kuwait. Kuwait is locals are very affluent, right? And with that comes the obstacle of getting them, incentivizing them to do research, right? To get on panels, to participate in groups, even quantitative interviews. And that has slowed down the adoption of many new technologies in Kuwait. Again, why would someone spend time with you when they already they don't need your incentives, right? And this has caused a lot of delay in terms of online panels, insights communities, EDC, so to speak. What I can tell you for sure since I joined is that I remember, I think the second year I came, mobile research was just coming in Kuwait.
What year is this, Ahmed? What year are we talking?
It was 2015, 2016, something like that. That is quite late, right?
Yeah.
So, and I can tell you, till now, it's not been fully developed, because people just look at that and be like, why do I need to, waste my time taking this survey, right? So it has slowed the adoption of various and numerous methodologies that could help expedite research and make it much more time and cost efficient. What I see is basically that has evolved is, when I first came, it was pen and paper still, like literally pen and paper. And now, we've introduced different solutions where you literally get a live dashboard with every interview that you do. So this is something I take pride in Kuwait, and I like to teach as many people as I go along down that road. And I can tell you that a lot of agencies we work with and we don't work with starting adopting something like this. So it's quite underdeveloped. I get pressured by the organization I work for, which is, we need insights now. And I always say, man, I don't have a genie, in the bottle. Like, I still have to ask someone. Get me that someone, I'll ask him. So adoption of many tools and solutions have been quite slow, and that's the nature of the market, unfortunately. So,
is AI changing everything for you then?
I've always been an advocate of what I call passive insights, which is there's data lying around. It's free, right? So we've always tried to find ways about leveraging this before AI comes into the picture. And this usually happened in the form of sentiment analysis, trying to take a topic and manually going after it for hours and hours, recruiting like 3-4 people to work on one topic. And it's never going to be as efficient and as strong as when a machine does it, right? So we did what Faisal introduced to us manually before, and it never used to yield these types of results. And when Faisal approached us with this kind of AI-powered research, I was like, finally, something that will get us insights fast. And we've used it a couple of times now, and we know how strong it is. It does not mean that it's going to replace traditional research at the moment, because you still have to validate some insights.
That's the big fear a lot of people have, is that we're when we're doing social listening, when we're looking at social media and getting insights, that this can and will replace our traditional media research. But that's just not the case.
Maybe it will, maybe it will not. I think it's too early to say for sure if it will. But I think maybe not before 10 years that it will
Yeah.
completely replace traditional research. Not before that. No way before that. And again, I think AI powered research is going to save us a lot of money, and it's going to save us a lot of time, and it's going to help us get around a lot of challenges we face in doing research in Kuwait. But it's still not going to be able to answer specific questions which we need to go to consumers and ask them about at this moment, at least in time.
Yeah.
Yet I can tell you, we've used it in identifying trends, for example. Um, that is something, it's a train. If it leaves the station, you'll never be able to tell if it's a trend or a fad. You need, for a trend to be able to say it's a trend, you need to work backwards, right? You need to have basically kept an eye on it for a while, tested it for a while with consumers to see if it's going up, going down.
Mm.
The beauty about AI powered research is that you can always look backwards, right? And predict the future at the same time with what you have. So it is game changing.
What I was really intrigued about was your insight into the Kuwaiti consumer and the fact that they might not actually be addressing brands by brand names, but by brand characteristics.
Right.
Faisal, is this something that your domain works very well at helping brands to sort out in the research of their products?
Yes and no. So what Ahmed's saying, I think I completely am aligned. The fact that and James, you also mentioned that it's not going to replace traditional research. It's the analogy I give for, let's say, mass communication TV advertisements and, let's say, digital advertisements. They both serve a certain purpose in influencing people. Similarly, when it comes to research, consumer insights, consumer intelligence, both need to coexist. There is a certain role and certain kinds of study where you necessarily, I have these discussions and I suggest that this is for this kind of a study. Let's say you're doing a concept test, you're doing a communication test, you're doing an evaluation, let's say, of a shopper behavior. These aspects, you should take a traditional approach where you need to do an exit interview, where you need to get a group of people and show them the concept, get them to taste the product. And then you've got consumer intelligence, which I think I loved what the word Ahmed used, is passive insights. There's so much passive insights that are lying just there,
Yeah.
and they're just not being used. And the idea of AI powered research is to pick on that. So I think it addresses aspects like overclaiming and underclaiming also. But yeah, so it's a balance you have to maintain, and I'm sure it's a challenge for Ahmed, because today's time, while he claims Kuwait is a slow market, but I don't know how he deals with this challenge, and maybe he's a better person to respond, because today he's probably got an option of qualitative research, doing focus group discussion, doing interviews, doing face-to-face interviews. And now I've just made his life miserable because I've also added, AI powered research as an option to him. So now I don't know how he does it, but he has, let's say, 5 options of different methodologies, and AI is one of them.
This is the question, Ahmed. If you had unlimited budget, what would your research look like? What would your mix of methodologies and approaches, what would they look like?
If I had no budget limitations, I would work on establishing an online panel in Kuwait. That's number one, where I include locals, where I would get proper incentives, to incentivize people. Because again, I believe there are traditional research doesn't have to be slow. Traditional research doesn't have to be doesn't have to take months and months to get insights. Again, now research isn't about a research objective that I have to answer. I think you can tell research companies are evolving into consultancies, because now you have business needs, and business needs with an ever-changing market, like a very fast-paced changing market. You cannot use the same methodologies and approaches that you've been using 15, 20 years ago. It just doesn't work this way anymore, and then research becomes obsolete. So if I had no constraints, I would honestly I would remain to use qual and quant, but I would do it differently, completely different, where I can get overnight insights, honestly. I would pour a lot more money into AI, because there is lack of insights backwards, so to speak, so we can predict the future. And I would use AI for that specifically. And I would do a lot more of um, big data stuff, which is also a bit lagging in Kuwait, to be honest.
Hmm. You keep bringing up the need for authentic incentives for
Right.
the Kuwaiti market. What can you give us an example of what you think that might be or they might be?
One
Okay.
of the big names here. I think it was every 6 months they have a prize of 1 million KD, and that's $3 million. If you open a
Wow.
certain account, and you don't need to have like a fortune in that bank account. It's just that you need to have at least 50 KD, which is like $150. So you gotta go big in Kuwait, man.
I do have a question, Ahmed, and this is genuine curiosity because you talked about the challenge primarily lies with the local Kuwaiti consumers just because they're not able to give time. How active are Kuwaiti consumers, the locals, online in terms of just generally, whether that's social media or reviews or just online?
They're active on
Mm.
TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram mainly. You
Okay.
have the new
Hmm.
progressive youth. They're more active on Reddit.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, where basically they try to give their 5 cents on so many topics, not just products. But I would say it is a very active nation online. I don't know if you know about this piece of news, but Google just signed a deal. It was worth 600 million. It's going to open up in Kuwait, basically,
Oh.
and it's going to revolutionize, cloud services, all that stuff. So 5 years, I think we'll see a quicker adoption rate than what we've seen in the past maybe 9 years. Um, and I can tell you for sure that when I look at reviews, a lot of people are opening up about saying what they think, in terms of products, at least, um, than before. So if it was frowned on before, actually, you now have a few companies that have opened in the past few years that is all about consumer reviews to products and to brands, and they have a considerable base. So I think this culture of um, saying what you think.
So you're optimistic. The future looks good, is what you're
Yes,
saying to me.
yes, it does. Yes, it does. I think it's a matter of time before they catch up to the rest of the world. And I can tell you, like neighboring countries against Saudi Arabia, UAE, you can use all these innovative tools to capture insights and make it cost and time efficient. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't happen here.
My last thing I want to ask Ahmed is you're really an evangelist when it comes to doing research and applying it and using a variety of tools. Are your colleagues in country, and not just at your organization, but in country, the other folks who are doing the similar things to you, are they listening to you? Are they taking cue from you? Are you helping to motivate them and excite them, or do they shake their head and say, "There goes Ahmed again"?
Some of them, yeah, but I think eventually they will come around and say, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
we need to do things differently. Um, I could tell you that just like we work with Faisal. Faisal is outside Kuwait. We've extended our briefs outside of Kuwait. Kuwait doesn't have a lot of research agencies, and you speak to any one of them, and they'll tell you about the challenges that they face here. But we keep pushing, right? I think there was a piece of news that someone just got arrested like 2 days ago because he was asking people about, like, what do you think of this? What do you think? It was an interviewer. So I think this culture is catching up, right?
Mm.
And I can tell you for sure that some of the marketing managers and other organizations, when they see focus groups happening, what is this? We should do more of that. We should do that. Yeah.
Wow.
So I can tell you that yes, my peers at the moment in different companies, they see the value of this. Some of them are more fortunate. Like research in Kuwait usually boils down to customer satisfaction, right? And this is owned by banks and telecoms. This is what the research industry thrives on in Kuwait. You don't get a lot of FMCG companies doing research in Kuwait. So this, I mean, you can easily push some surveys to your customers, right? Where you ask them about their opinions, rate this, rate that. But where it's going to get really interesting is if the other FMCG companies, if other companies in other domains start to realize the importance of research and do more of it. And that's when I think you will start to see things moving. And new methodologies being adopted, new approaches to research being adopted. So I hope so.
This is a great time to be in the field of market research and working in companies that are willing to put some money into that field. It's got to be exciting.
Definitely.
Ahmed, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Faisal.
Thank you,
Faisal,
Ahmed.
do you have
Thanks a lot.
anything you want to add?
No, it was a lovely discussion. I think it was great to listen about Kuwait in specific, about the consumers, the need of why it's important to do research in Kuwait. Good to see the perspectives on traditional research, AI, and the future of research. It's an exciting place to be at. So thank you, Ahmed, for your input. It was lovely catching up.
Same here.
You've been listening to the Consumer Connections podcast powered by Scylla, and we've been talking about market research and keeping up with consumer trends with Ahmed Abdelhamid. Thank you.
Thank you.